All right, 8th graders, we're moving on to lesson for chapter 3-2b, graphing equations with two variables. Make sure you have some colored pens or markers and a ruler, a 6-inch ruler would be just fine. A linear equation is one that can be graphed by a line. You can actually see the word line right in the word linear. It can also be called a linear function, so don't get too rattled if sometimes you'll see it called a linear function. The general form for a linear equation is y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept, or where the line will cross the y-axis. Now, in all honesty, if you have a highlighter handy, this formula or equation, this equation right here, is major importance to memorize because we are going to come back to that equation time after time after time. So y equals mx plus b, m is the slope, b is the y-intercept. This is called the slope-intercept equation for a line. In example 1, they want us to graph the linear equation y equals 2x plus 1. What we're going to do is make a table of values that you are going to choose for x and then do the math to find the resulting y. Substitute for x, do that math. The value chosen for x and the y that you find by doing the math will form an ordered pair that can be graphed. It is always a good idea to choose 0 for one of the x values. That will actually give you the y-intercept. It is also a good idea to choose 2 positive values and 2 negative values if possible. Now, sometimes your graph is too small and you just can't do it. This is one type of a function table, and I'm going to start out with 0. Y equals 2 times 0 plus 1. So y is going to equal 0 plus 1. Therefore, y will equal 1. This is going to be that y-intercept. I'm going to stay with some fairly small numbers. I'm going to pick 2. Y equals 2 times 2 plus 1. Y will equal 4 plus 1. So y will equal 5. And the point will be 2, 5. Then I'm going to choose 4. Y will equal 2 times 4 plus 1. Y equals 8 plus 1. Y equals 9. So my point is 4, 9. I'm going to choose -2. Now, you don't have to choose the negative values where you've chosen positive, but it's a habit that I've kind of gotten into. So that's one of the reasons why I do it. You may certainly choose -1 or -3 if you'd like. So y equals 2 times -2 plus 1. This time y is going to equal -4 plus 1, so y will equal -3. And my point to graph will be -2, -3. Let's choose -4. 2 times -4 plus 1, so y is going to equal -8 plus 1, y will equal -7. And the point to graph will be -4, -7. Now, I graph those ordered pairs. So I'm going to graph 0, 1, and I'm going to graph 2, 5, and I will graph 4, 9. Then I will graph the -2, -3, and the -4, -7. This is where you can carefully line up your ruler and connect those dots to make a line. And I can't use a ruler, so I'm going to have to add some dots in here. and hope I can connect them somewhat straight. Notice that I go all the way through the entire coordinate grid. I don't just make a little tiny line right somewhere in here, okay? Or somewhere just in the little middle part of the graph. Go through the whole graph. Don't forget to put double-headed arrows because this is a line. It goes to infinity. Now you'll notice here that the coefficient on the x was a positive number, and my line is between quadrants 1 and 3. Here's another table. This is a fairly typical equation, negative 1/2 x plus 2. You'll notice that the denominator here is 2. You're going to be multiplying by negative 1/2. That's the same thing as dividing by negative 2. So if you're wise, you will always choose a number that is a multiple of that denominator. So in this case, I'm going to pick multiples of 2. If it had been negative 1/3, then I would have picked multiples of 3. If it would have been negative 1/4, I would have picked multiples of 4. I'm going to start with 0. And I'm going to do this math in my head. Negative 1/2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. My point will be 0, 2. Then I'm going to choose 2. Negative 1/2 times 2 is going to be negative 1. Negative 1 plus 2 is going to be 3. That is not correct. So, sorry, I'm going to erase it. And you know what? I'm going to pick 4. Because 4 is just going to be easier for me to deal with. Okay? Negative 1/2 times 4 is negative 2. Negative 2 plus 2 is going to be 0. Now, if you have to write it out, go right ahead. Maybe I should too. I'll probably get it more right if I do it. 2 plus 2, so y is going to equal 0. So 4, 0. Oh, again, note, this 0, 2 is your y-intercept. And I'm going to choose 8. And I better write it out. It's kind of late at night here as I'm doing this, and it's just going to be better if I do. Negative 4 plus 2, y will equal negative 2. So 8, negative 2. Then I'm going to choose negative 4. Now, here's where you got to remember that a negative number times a negative number is positive. So negative 1/2 times negative 4 is going to be positive 2 plus 2 will result in 4. So my point is negative 4, 4. And I will choose negative 8. Y will equal negative 1/2 times negative 8 plus 2. So y will equal 4 plus 2, so y will equal 6. Now I'm going to graph those points. 0, 2 is my y-intercept. That's where it intercepts the y-axis. I had 4, 0, and I had 8, negative 2. I also have negative 4, 4, and I have negative 8, negative 6. Again, you can line up a ruler. I'm going to have to add a couple points here just to help me out. Actually, I need to be there. Okay. Now, if you'll notice back to the equation, the coefficient of the x was a negative 1/2, And if you have a negative slope, you're going to be between quadrants 2 and 4. Many times we use a value table that only has the x and the y. The math is performed mentally. The x and the y are graphed as an ordered pair. I'm going to choose to use 0, 2, 1, -1, and -2. At this point, hit pause, you do the work and graph, and then I'll show you what it's like when it's done. And this would be the value table and the line. Again, I apologize, your line will probably look a lot better since you have a ruler. And if you go on to the next example, example 4, again hit pause, and I will probably use 0, 3, 8, -3, and -8. And there is the solution. Go on to number 5 and try that one. I am going to be using 0, 2, 4, -2, and -4. And there are your solutions and the subsequent line. And that will be Scouting Out.